Welcome to Introduction to Unity. So we're just going to have a quick look around and just explain some of the main concepts, the user interface, and how it all relates to programming, and also how we're going to use it through information technology. So here we've got the project load or create project screen. In general, what I do is create a folder called C Unity Projects. I don't like to work off the network. The network tends to cause some issues. Definitely don't like to work off a USB drive. You will have problems with that. So it's going to be a 3D project. Most of the projects we do are going to be 3D. I'm just going to call this one Introduction, and we just hit Create Project using Unity 5.6.1, which is the latest one that I've just downloaded. So looking at the screen here, we've got the menu, we've got the file menu, and we have two things that you need to be aware of. One is the scene and one is the project. In fact, three. And the third one is the build. So the scene is kind of like if you're building a game, you might imagine having different levels, or you might have a different screen. So you might have a menu screen, you might have a high score screen, but you might have different levels. So each scene would be a different level, or a menu screen, or a high score screen, or a settings screen, or something like that. And it's important that you make sure that you save the scene. Excuse the noise in the background. The neighbours are building a house on a Saturday. So all those scenes get bundled into a project, and we saw that when you come into Unity, you come in and you create a project. So what you do is create all those scenes, and then in your build, you'll pull in all those scenes, and then you'll build that. You can build that to Windows, or you can build to Android or iOS, PlayStation or Xbox, or quite a number of different things, but there are a few other things that you have to add in before you can actually use some of those. So let's move on to our assets menu, and here this is basically where we create packages, or we export packages of things that we might create inside Unity. So we might actually be using, say, Autodesk 3ds Max to build our models, and we can import those models into Unity. We might group those models together, put them in a scene, and we might export those out. So if we're working in a team, we might be working on a scene, and when we finish with it, we export that out and send that across to another team member to work on. Also, what you'll notice is that you can bring in ones that already exist, packages that already exist, and this is also where you can purchase things online, and they'll come through with that mechanism there. We've got the game object menu, which is extremely important. This is where we start to look at some of the programming terminology. Game object is probably the most basic unit that you'll be dealing with. And you can see here we can have an empty one, or we can have 3D game objects, we can have 2D game objects, light, audio, video, user interface, particle system, and camera. So these are sort of like the Lego blocks of Unity, but as opposed to Lego, when you pick off a blue block, that's all it is. It's a blue block, you cannot make any changes to it. Whereas when you pick off say say a cube here, you can make all sorts of changes to that. Moving on to components. Something else that you can add to a game object is a component, and there's a whole lot of different things, and one of the most common things is physics, where you can add some colliders, and you can add some effects, and all sorts of things. And one of the other main things is you can add scripts to those game objects. Having a look at the interface, the hierarchy. This is basically like your structure for your scene. So all the bits and pieces, objects for your scene, they go into the hierarchy, and you can structure them kind of like a folder organization, except they're called parent and child rather than folders and subfolders. Here we've got the scene window, and the scene window is what you actually build. So that's his instruction site, and it's in 3D. We'll come back and have a look at that later. We've got the game, which is exactly what you'll see if you're playing the game, as opposed to the scene where you just got to wander around and build things here and there. Game is what you see through the camera that has been selected. Yes, you can have multiple cameras. You've got your play, pause, and next button. There is no stop button. You just turn the play button off. You have an inspector, and the inspector is where you see different properties of a game object. Down below here, in the project window, we've got assets. It's just a way of organising the assets. Yes, it's exactly the assets from the menu here. And we have a console where we can see any errors and that, which is extremely useful. And then we have our sort of navigation toolbar, and we'll go through that a bit later. So that's pretty much the main explanation of Unity and the user interface and the menu system. So next we'll be having a look at the most basic here, which is the game object.